Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 6 of Doom Patrol. So, last time we left off, we kind of closed out the two-parter and just wrapped everything up with that, but Mr. Nobody gave Jane, in her doctor persona, another mission, another goal to accomplish. And it kind of ended off with the line like, what the fuck is Doom Patrol? With Jane asking this. So there's a lot of questions that raises. A lot. Obviously, it means that Doom Patrol aren't like this group that are known or anything. Our heroes aren't known as Doom Patrol. At least not yet. And it just makes you kind of wonder, why is he doing this? What is this for? What's happening? A lot of questions. Hopefully we'll find out. But we've still got a bit of ways to go. I realized that this season is 15 episodes, which is a really odd number. And so I'm realizing, like, even with this episode, we're not even halfway through yet. And it does kind of make me wonder, like, what else is there going to be? Like I'm not saying like I thought it should be ending soon or anything, but I'm just wondering like what other storylines are we gonna get? And I think I brought this up last time too, because with that last scenario being such a big end of the world scenario, with it being this like apocalyptic kind of thing going on, where do you go from there? Like what do you do going forward comparatively? Because with a lot of shows, it's like that is what you have to do in order to keep interest. You have to keep raising the bar. You have to make every villain stronger or more of a threat. You have to make the heroes like either get stronger themselves or gain new abilities or stuff like that. You see this a lot of time in shonen battle anime, where each villain tends to be a step up from the last one. To the point where the heroes also have to step it up. The heroes also have to gain new powers or make their powers better or whatnot, just to be able to handle the stronger enemies. It's typical power scaling. And a lot of superhero things do this. Not all of them, of course. Like you'll go from like a superhero story about the end of the world to something that's more of like a local thing, like this local villain is threatening things, and it kind of like it's kind of more like a wave with a lot of superhero content, and so that's what they could be going for here. But I'm just wondering, like, it's like, where is it going to go? Maybe it's just because of how used to anime and power scaling I am that I have expected just like go up and up. But the thing is, even with like a more wave style here, from here, it just seems like nowhere they could go would be reaching these kind of heights again, unless there's just other big world-ending threats like that coming in the future. But I also feel like if they do that too often, it could get old. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes and kind of take it from there. Um, but yeah, I don't really know what else to say going forward with this, so we're just going to find out what we have in store. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow a link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, we now know why Mr. Nobody sent, well, Jane especially, why he told her to find the Doom Patrol. It was a message, a warning, a threat, even, to not cross him. In the 50s, the Doom Patrol were a superhero team. And their actions caught the attention of Mr. Nobody, who in return attacked. And in a battle with them, he won. He manipulated them to such a degree that he ruined them. He just completely destroyed their mentality. He drove them insane. And not in the same way that he drove all those other people insane with the music and everything during that attack. He drove them into a deep psychosis to the point where they basically have to be cared for because they're barely there. The leader, Steve, is a sidekick, and he's created this projection, this mental projection around this entire property, creating this illusion basically to keep them mentally stable, where they're still all young, powerful, where they won, beat Mr. Nobody, and where they're teaching now. They're retired from superhero work and they're teaching the next generation of metahumans. But none of that's real. It's all an illusion. And the truth is extremely depressing, extremely sad. And Rita was important here because she, back in the 50s, had a relationship with Steve that ended abruptly after he had read her mind. From what I gathered, she had inadvertently caused this other actress, who she was maybe a little jealous of, to commit suicide by slitting her wrists. And it's something that's haunted Rita. As you can see in this episode, she is horrified by it. And we first heard about this actress like right at the beginning of the episode, pretty much, as basically this other person that this director was looking at for the movie. And that she almost slept with this guy just to try and get the role, but ended up accidentally killing him when she lost control due to just the horrific and just disgusting situation. Where even the secretary to this guy, after Rita accidentally killed him, was like, "Oh, he died of a heart attack. You were never here, girl." And it's like, thank you. I'm glad that you're sticking up for her against this douchebag. But at the same time, it's like, that's a traumatic experience nonetheless. Because Rita did not mean to do that. And then apparently sometime after, this other actress committed suicide after this. I don't know if it was because of that incident or something else, but it clearly is stuck with Rita and is being used at this point. And the fact in the past that their relationship broke apart when this guy Steve read her mind and found out about that, even though he said he wasn't going to read her mind against her will. That's an extreme invasion of privacy, but it's also really sad for Rita. This episode was monumental for her character. Like, up to this point, we've seen that, yeah, she had a bit of a vain side, but was never, like, outwardly mean, I guess you could say, but it seems like maybe after her accident, she had started to become a lot more aggressive and a lot more abusive. It seems like that was brought up, that was mentioned in this episode, that she was acting like that. Um, or maybe I'm just wrong and I'm still trying to like maybe it is kind of implying that she had been that way. But we have seen through these past couple episodes she is trying to better herself and she wants to save someone so badly. She needs a win. She wasn't able to save that kid whose parents had raised him to end the world. And now, even though she helped things, she was not truly able to save Steve in his old age and condition. She was only able to calm him down, basically. And it just shows how these characters have been fucked up by society, by their lives, by their powers, by all of this. And we see it with other characters in this episode too. With Cliff's unrelenting desire to know his daughter all these years after she was the only other survivor of that wreck, and to her knowledge, the only one. You see it even with Vic. He's scared that his father is going to do something to him when he's put under, when he's powered down. He's terrified of that, and he practically begs Cliff to stay there and watch. And so when he wakes back up and finds out that his father not only didn't do anything, but is actually putting forth real trust in him and is actually showing that he's going to let him handle things, you can see how much it affects him by the fact that he gets up and goes to hug him. This is something new for him, and it's something that he's had to struggle with his father, just that level of trust. And that's really sad for him to have gotten to that point where he was that scared to power down and let his dad just do whatever. And we see even with Larry, even if he was as minor in this episode as he was, we still see a bit of his traumas and all coming back too. The way that was worded with the nightmare vision that Steve had shown him, like, are you and your partner ready to return to action, or whatever the exact wording was? The way that partner was emphasized, you know what it was talking about. You know it was talking about his homosexuality. And we've already seen in the past episodes how that has affected him and how deeply that has affected who he is now. And yeah, there's more to it with him for sure, with this being inside him, this energy being. But we're getting to see a lot of the humanity of these characters. And even Jane, we get to see a lot of her sorrow over Niles being missing, the only person who has ever truly cared for her, the only person who has ever truly shown her the amount of love and respect and familial, just healthy relationship that she needed. So getting to see her have to struggle with him not being there and watching those old tapes, and then having to struggle with everything happening in the modern day with this situation because of it. Talking to this guy who knew Niles and finding out all of this stuff that Niles was involved with and all. It's depressing to see these characters going through all of this. And I've talked about before how this series does an extremely good job at making us care about these characters. I talked about last time how this isn't just a comedy. It's like, yes, it has a lot of great comedy, it has a lot of great parody in it, but it also blends that very well with serious, like, very, very serious content. This series has touched on depression, suicide, infidelity, just a horrific accident that caused death, mental illness, and so much more. And it tackles these in a very big, meaningful way where you never feel like it's making light of them. In fact, you feel it's actually taking it very seriously. And for a series that follows this group of characters who, yeah, it's very clear that they're supposed to maybe be a little bit of a parody, a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a jab at the superhero genre and all. For a series like that to tackle these kinds of heavy subjects in a very just really respectable way, it's impressive. But more than that, it's really fucking cool to see that. It's just really cool to see a series that does have so much comedy, so much goofiness, so much weirdness. We even saw it in this episode with touching back with the guy with the Velociraptor second head and everything that we saw in Paraguay. We even caught back up with him and we saw what was going on with him, and it was goofy and it was silly, it was ridiculous. He's robbing this convenience store or whatever, and his dinosaur head just attacks him out of nowhere. It's like, this is silly. But at the same time, this episode tackles such heavy topics at the same time in such a respectable, such a intense way that it's like you almost wonder how this is the same series where just a matter of episodes ago there was a farting donkey who had another world in its throat. You wonder how this is the same series as that. This episode was important. The way it touched on mental health and just the decline of mental health after an extremely traumatic, horrific event is important. These three former heroes are not looked at in the aftermath of this as lesser people. They are not looked at as a joke. They are not looked at as weak. They are looked at as victims. They are looked at as people we should feel sorry for and should be putting forth effort into helping. In fact, we find out that Niles has not been checking up on them often throughout the years. And it's been like 50 years or so. It actually paints Niles as more in the wrong for that. Which, honestly, the series has painted Niles in the wrong on quite a few things. um, Niles is definitely not a perfect person. But it very much paints these three former heroes as victims who desperately need help and love and people to care for them. And luckily, Joshua is doing so. That he's there to help them. And luckily, Rita was able to give Steve one last true goodbye. One last little bit of humanity with all of their history. Because it's undeniable the parody in this with like the comparisons that could be made with X-Men. But then you see how emotional this gets. And again, it almost feels like a different series. It's like it starts off, we're parodying X-Men, and then all of a sudden we have horror imagery, and it gets extremely depressing and sad and heartbreaking. And I think that's why I'm loving this show so much. Like with a show like The Boys, it's very upfront about what you're getting. Everything is fucked in that series. Everything is terrible. Everyone pretty much is terrible. But in that series, it's very upfront. In this series, it surprises you. On the surface level, it's very fun and goofy and silly, and it's a parody, and it jokes around. And yeah, there's some serious moments, but on the surface, it's very much a fun series. But then you have episodes like this and moments like this, and even moments we've seen in plenty of the past episodes where it gets really damn serious. And where it's like, oh my God, this is actually really, really intense. And it tugs at your soul at points. And I'm really hoping it continues to do so. I'm really hoping that it continues to do so, because this is really impressive that it's handling it this well, that it's handling such serious topics like this well. And it's not making light of them at all. It's not poking fun at them or treating them like a joke. It's not even just holding back on the seriousness of them. It's portraying them as real, legitimate issues. It's giving them respect and showing how serious and real they are. From not only our main characters, but these other characters we're meeting. And presumably, our heroes, our team, is going to take on the mantle of Doom Patrol at some point going forward. And I'm really interested for when that happens, to see how it happens, who the one who suggests it is, and just all the details going into that. This series is definitely impressing me and surprising me on so many levels. And I'm loving it. I can't wait to see the next episode. I can't wait to see where this goes. And I was wondering in the pre-thoughts, where do you go from having a catastrophic world-ending event involving cults, involving magic, involving all of this crazy shit? Where do you go from there? And I talked about in the pre-thoughts how yeah, you could definitely like bring it down a little bit and then go up again in the future. But they didn't really do that here. This isn't what I would call bringing it down a bit. Because what we got in this episode was just as intense, just as important, and just as serious, but in a different way. Instead of physical, just high stakes action and whatnot, we get emotional and mental stakes. We get seriousness and intensity that focuses on the characters and the depth within them, the struggles they've gone through, the traumas they've gone through. And while it may not seem on surface level as big of a event or an episode or whatever as the last couple have been, when you get down to it, this is the episode that matters comparatively. Those last two episodes, yeah, of course they matter, but comparatively, they're not as big a deal for where this series could be heading. This episode helps shape these characters, their mental states, their emotional states, their future for this series. This was an important episode for the characters, for the writing, for the story, and for the seriousness it brought to these heavy topics, such as suicide, trauma, and mental illness. This is, without question, my favorite episode of the series so far. Because of my own struggles with this kind of shit, with mental illness, with suicide, with trauma. And they're not the same as other people's, and in some cases, they might not be seen as intense as other people's struggles with this kind of stuff. But to me, from my perspective, they are. They still affect me to this day. I haven't been like extremely outwardly suicidal for years, but those thoughts cross my mind most days. I still have to deal with trauma to the point where there's certain things that bother me to such a high degree that it scares me, that I have literal nightmares about it. I have to deal with my autism and depression and anxiety constantly, doing anything almost. And so this episode spoke to me on a lot of levels. Now I didn't think this up. I didn't think this series and even this episode, like watching, I didn't think it was gonna make me cry like this. But I'm serious on how much this episode matters to me. Seeing any kind of series or movie, video game, comic, whatever, tackle this kind of shit in such a respectable, real way is important to me. Because it makes me feel heard. It makes me feel like people pay attention. And in a world where I constantly feel otherwise, where I constantly feel like people aren't paying attention or aren't understanding or aren't hearing or aren't even willing to listen, when I feel heard, it matters. So, yeah, even starting these afterthoughts, I didn't think I was actually going to break like this, but I did. And again, I went into this just thinking this was going to be a very comedic series because that's what I had heard about it. I just thought it was going to be funny, parody, haha. And now it's made me cry, so. That's impressive. I mean, it's always impressive when. Well, actually, it's, I guess, not really impressive when a series makes me cry because I cry easily. But it's like, when a series makes me cry, it shows that it's getting to me. It shows that something in it is affecting me. Not every series does make me cry. Not every situation in a series makes me cry. Even if similar stuff has made me cry in other shows or movies or whatnot. When a series or a movie or whatever makes me cry, it means that it's affected me and that I've connected with it. And this has definitely gotten to that point. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, though. No spoilers, please. No spoilers. And thank you so much for continuing to tune in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.